this past week. It certainly makes things interesting in the power rankings. Certainly at the top are Brandon Marcello with his list on Monday. He mirrors the AP poll with Texas sitting atop the table ahead of Ohio State and Oregon. He ain't giving that love to Penn State, though. He has them switched with Miami over the AP voters. Georgia sitting 5th in both. So let's welcome in the author, college football analyst Brandon Marcello, and Danny Kanell to discuss Week 6. Gentlemen, absolute chaos in the top 11 of the sport. Danny, are you looking at this as an anomaly, or are we truly seeing parity begin to finally emerge in college football?
I think we're seeing parity emerge, and I know it's always been here. Like, we've had wild, wacky weekends on weekends that were supposed to be sleepy before, right? But it does feel different. And maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment, but I do think there's a few different reasons why the playing field has been leveled, so to speak, where you see the likelihood of Vanderbilt going toe-to-toe with Bama, and there was nothing fluky about it. It looks like Vanderbilt had some talent that was pretty on par with what Alabama was doing. So then you ask, all right, well, how is this happening, or why is this different? And I do think that the transfer portal and NIL have really spread out some of the talent. And it's not like Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia still won't have the best talent, but I do think it's prevented them from amassing all of the talent, which maybe they had that edge for the last 25, 50 years. And the portal has really made it so that it's hard to develop teams. And you're seeing so much turnover on roster, like you see at Alabama, where maybe you see a coached team that's had more continuity and more experienced players get the best of a team that might have a lot of transfer portal players. I think there's some really interesting dynamics at play. I think it's great for college football fans, but I do think parity is here to stay.
I'll echo that, but I'll add something to this. This is one of the seasons with the lowest winning percentage for a group of 5 schools against power conference schools. I agree that the playing field is leveled out, but it's leveled out among the power conferences. More talent is in these bigger conferences than ever, but it's more spread out than ever in those big conferences, which is why you're seeing a Vanderbilt beat in Alabama. Vanderbilt's not necessarily beating Alabama with power conference transfers. They're beating them with guys that were the best players at New Mexico State a year ago, for example. And meanwhile, at Arkansas, they're beating a Tennessee team that was top 4 with a new quarterback who came from Boise State. So you're seeing, obviously, these power conferences are stronger, but also they're stronger across the board because they're taking the best talent from these group of 5 schools and putting them on the field, and it's elevating them even further among the power conference teams.
Well, and you see how it lays out for the college football playoff based on the current rankings right now. It's something that's going to possibly shift week to week if we keep seeing this kind of parity rear its head. Arkansas head coach Sam Pittman, one of the coaches who was quite vocal after his team's win over Tennessee, saying, hey, it's time to put some respect on our name. And we all saw that Nick Saban quote after Vandy upset the Tide. Both teams cracked the top 25 in the power rankings, Brandon. Vandy already, though, 2 touchdown dogs to Kentucky next week. So this is a 1-week sign of respect, right?
Yes. Also, I'm rewarding teams for getting it done on the field. Also, we've seen these flashes of brilliance from both Vanderbilt and Arkansas earlier this season. Vanderbilt should have beaten Mizzou. A loss is a loss. I'm not discounting that or saying I'm changing history. But we've seen Vanderbilt building up to this moment. And Vanderbilt and Arkansas are not the same teams that they were in week 1 or week 2. Arkansas, if you want to go through the hypotheticals in a parallel universe, could have actually been undefeated at this point in the season. They have been turning the ball over substantially. They ranked 109th with 9 turnovers going into that Tennessee game. They had Oklahoma State on the ropes, then turned the ball over, ended up losing in overtime. And they also had Texas A&M on the ropes, leading them late in the 4th quarter, but then made some big mistakes and big penalties. This Arkansas team is better than it was a week ago, and it's certainly better than it was 3 weeks ago. And they continue to outgain opponents offensively. Their defense has been phenomenal all season. The Razorbacks look like a top 25 team to me, but they got to continue to curb those mistakes. No turnovers against Tennessee, but also they struggled in the red zone a little bit, couldn't convert 2 4th downs. This is a team that could have beaten Tennessee by double digits if they were able to convert some of those plays in the red zone. Vanderbilt just pushed Alabama around. They dominated them in the trenches at times, and obviously that translated on the scoreboard, but also in time of possession, which was incredible. But again, These teams should be rewarded this week. They should be in the top 25 in my eyes. We'll see how they move forward, but they've improved week to week, and they deserve that recognition.
Brandon, I was a little bothered. I feel like this is a little deference to the SEC dominance in college football. A team like SMU, you've got right behind them, who only has one loss, and it was to a top 15 in BYU. I'm real curious to see how these teams do respond. You mentioned Vanderbilt, a 2-touchdown underdog to Kentucky. They also did lose to Georgia State. I think that has to matter, and I do think they're getting better, and you have to wonder what that type of win does for their confidence and belief in Diego Pavia and a lot of the players on that team that contributed. And Arkansas, I did want to highlight Arkansas because I do wonder if Arkansas, if that was the type of win, and you mentioned they could have won every other game, and they did have a 21-point lead that they blew against Oklahoma State, but they've been much more competitive this year. I wonder if beating Tennessee, and I hope it does, secures Sam Pittman for another year, because of all the coaches in college football, he had the hottest seat coming into the season. It was him or Billy Napier. What was going to be the first coach to get fired? Napier finally gets a win against UCF, but getting a win against Tennessee when they're in the top 5, that to me should give Sam Pittman a little bit of a leash here that, was very tight, that people were looking at potentially firing him. I hope it does, because I think Sam Pittman is the perfect fit for the Razorbacks. I hope that win was enough to get some of his critics off his back.
And now he gets a bye week to enjoy this win. All right, lastly, Ashton Jeanty continues to be must-watch viewing for Boise State. He, of course, leads the Heisman odds after another great weekend. He eclipsed 1,000 yards in Saturday's 62-30 rout of Utah State on his 90th carry of the season. The kid's averaging a first down every time he touches the ball. Danny, this is the #1 scoring offense in college football. Are they the best team for you amongst the G5 right now, or do they just want it the most?
They're the best right now, and I don't think that changes either. James Madison was in this conversation. They had a rough loss this past weekend. UNLV was in this conversation. They lost to Syracuse at home this past Friday night. So with all these other teams falling by the wayside, I think you have to look at Boise State as not only the favorite, but it's starting to feel like a lock when you look at their schedule in a Mountain West conference, which is being pilfered by the Pac-12, or then whatever we're going to call that thing moving forward. It's not exactly a gauntlet of teams. Wyoming, who historically has been pretty tough, they're having a down year. UNLV, as I mentioned, just coming off a loss. I think they're the better team. So I think not only are you looking at Boise State as the team to represent the group of 5, what I think you could start seeing is Boise State not checking in as the 12 seed, because I think too many people, myself included, say, group of 5, they're going to be that last seed. As a conference champion, they have a potential to be a 7, 8, or 9 seed if they keep winning out. Their only loss is very close to Oregon. I think that's the story to watch out for, is not only is Boise State represent the group of 5, but how high they could be ranked in those final 12 spots.
Keep Ashton Jeanty healthy. Put him in a glass bubble during practices if you have to. He is special. He's only had to play 16 quarters of football to eclipse 1,000 yards, much deserving of being the Heisman Trophy favorite right now. But, man, I would hate to see what this team would look like if he was just slowed a little bit or injured or they had to hold him out. But having said that, that schedule's conducive for them to make a run. Huge game here in 3 weeks against UNLV. That'll determine, to me, whether Boise State could be a team that's higher than that 12th spot in the playoff if they continue to win and win the Mountain West Conference this season. What an incredible run. What an incredible performance. Ashton Jeanty, man, that guy is the best player in college football, not named Travis Hunter, who's doing things that we've never seen before in the sport.
Yeah, you have to clarify that statement before we go. Danny Kanell, Brandon Marcello talking about this week's College Football Power Rankings, which you can view over on CBSSports.com. And make sure you're following the Cover 3 podcast. Monday, the guys are out with Upon Further Review. That's a look back at some of the most consequential results of the weekend. And as we mentioned, the top 11 in the AP poll going 5-5. So there's a lot to discuss. Download and follow wherever you get your pods, or scan that QR code. Get that latest episode right now.
Playoff baseball continues today with the Yankees and the Royals in the ALDS.